Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel Drawing with Michael. I am of course Michael, or Michael Clarida Arts, or Michael Clarida Illustration. I haven't decided what I'm going to be calling the channel, but for now just know that we're going to be doing some drawing today. Today I'm drawing on the HP ZBook, and we're going to be doing some character faces. I'm going to be drawing in Photoshop and just kind of going through, and for those of you who don't know a lot about Photoshop, we're just going to do a really quick kind of a first swing, first exposure of how to create a file, how to select a brush, what the brush tools are in terms of pressure sensitivity, and how to activate those things. And hopefully you guys will get something sweet out of it. Not going to draw too long today because I have a huge buttload of work to do, but I think that hopefully it'll help some of you guys that are looking to get into digital illustration. I do a lot of traditional illustration and traditional character work on this channel, and that is kind of my hobby and what I was traditionally trained in. In my professional life, I'm of course in the digital world. So anyway, enjoy the show. Okay, so this is my setup this morning. I'm on my drawing desk. I've got my ZBook in front of me. Of course, you see a lot of the traditional accoutrement with regards to illustration, my markers and pencils and stuff. What's great about the HP ZBook is it's not like other computers where the keyboard has to be connected for you to use the keys. You know, like the Surface and some of those other devices, or the Dell, which you have to, you know, it's an all-in-one, and you slap it behind, and then you don't have access to the keys at all. What's great about the ZBook is the keyboard, it's magnetic, and it attaches, so whenever you need to do some work like this, you can, like this, and it's attached. So what I do is I just detach it, and I stick it along the side, just like I have, you know, my quick keys and whatnot. And I can use it in that capacity. So I've got my glove on. As you see, I don't have touch activated. Another great feature of the ZBook is it has a pre-programmed little quick keys on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, so you can program them how you want to. But what's great is, if you look, one of the keys is touch on, touch off. So it turns the touch on and touch off at will. So right now I have touch on, and I just press this little quick key right here, and it turns to touch completely off. So if there's a program that I don't like, that is a little too robust when it comes to finger sensitivity, I can turn it off really quick. I think last night I activated my other computer. Oh. So, all right, let me go ahead and sign in. Okay, so now we're signed in. I see there's a little bit of a glare on here, which isn't good. Let's go ahead and file new. Let's see how we do here. So I'm doing, okay, so whenever you first open Photoshop, you know, a lot of people get kind of afraid because of the interface. Actually, I got a bunch of crap on here. What is this, Russia? Where did all this crap come from? It's like eraser stuff. That's what it is. Little pieces of... It's little itty bitty pieces of eraser and rubber on my $3,000 computer. Anyway, so here we go. So you open up Photoshop and it's got a lot of different windows, a lot of different tabs, interfaces, just a lot. You know, I'm going to take my glove off because obviously I'm not supposed to wear it because it's got a bunch of crap on it. A lot of things that look confusing. So one of the first things to do, if you've ever been in other programs, if you want to start a new document, typically you'll go to File, New. So it's no different in Photoshop. So File, New. And it gives you a lot of custom, and you get this interface panel right here, and you look, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do? I have no idea what I'm doing. This is the first time in here. You can basically go and pre-select or select one of the pre-done file types and sizes. So 18 by 10 at 300 ppi. You know, if you go into photo, you can basically choose which one is applicable to your particular situation. print, they've got letter size, legal, tabloid, A4, art and illustration, pixel grid, 2000 pixel grid, poster, 18 by 24. So all these are great, but what I like to do is I just do my own. So you specify what you want in here and you know what size. So I do 18 by 10 inches. I don't do pixels unless I'm doing something for the internet. I can do orientation. I can also I change the resolution, so I'll do 300 dpi, 8-bit instead of 16. I'll do RGB color and a white background. Pretty simple. Boom. So there's my new file. Okay. So what I'll do sometimes as well is I'll do save as, because I want to be able to save the document, you know, first thing. So what I'll do is I'll do test fun faces. Whoops. Faces. Okay? Just save it on the desktop. It's fine. Don't worry about any of this stuff down here right now. Okay, so now I have my document, and I don't like working on a white background because basically on a white background, whenever I start putting in value, it kind of works against you because you're working with the whitest of whites. So to get the darkest of darks, you'd have to basically do the complete opposite, which would be black. So what I do is I work in the mid-range. So I'll double-click using my pen stylus on here. Actually, I can do select all. So option A, option A is all. Edit. So let's go ahead. I'll select a mid-tone gray, edit, fill, foreground color, deselect. So hopefully, yeah, you guys can see. Okay, so now I don't like working on my background because I like to have my sketch separated. So I'm going to come over here to the interface window, and you've got a lot of little icons down at the bottom. And you know, you want to add a layer. So there's a myriad of ways you can do this. You can say layer, new, layer. Okay, and it's got a lot of questions it wants to ask you, but you can do new layer, and it asks you layer. Okay, so there we go, layer 1. But what I like to do is I just come down here and I add a layer. Right, this little plus. So this is kind of like a quick interface. Okay, so then this is currently in a window, so it's like a window inside of a window. It's in Windows, you know, and it's time travel. I'm just kidding. So what I do typically is I'll hit the F, and that brings me into the full screen mode. And then I zoom in. Now, I've seen a lot of people go over here, then they zoom in. Then they come back to their brush. Okay, I don't do that. I've got quick keys set up and quick key memorization in my brain. So just muscle memory, I go to, let me see, I think it's spacebar Command Alt. And that brings up, yeah, Control Alt. So, and then you press the space bar, and basically what you can do is zoom in and out. You just click it and drag left to right, and it lets you zoom in and out. I do a lot of that because I like zooming out whenever I look at my sketch to look at the silhouette, look at the sizing, look at the spacing, look at the proportions, and it helps me a lot. Excuse me. Gosh, allergies. Allergies. Okay, so I select my paintbrush. I've got a particular brush that I like to sketch with. It's called my favorite sketch brush. It's right here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to these little tabs, these little buttons up here when I'm inside of the brush environment, and I can basically do some really quick adjustments to how the brush reacts with the canvas. So currently I've got pressure on, this little button right here, I've got pressure on. You can turn it off and basically it'll be black. Okay, so I turn that on. This has to do with the flow, the amount of paint coming out of it at one time. And then I've got this little button over here clicked on, so it's a taper. So you see how it tapers down to a point, very similar. So if I turn that off, it's square. Now the pressure sensitivity is still on, but the taper is off. And then you can do some more fine adjustments over here on the in the brush settings. So in the brush icon, and all these are active, I come up here this little white box, and I click this little white box, and a separate menu comes up. And then you're like, oh crap, there's so many freaking brushes, and I can flip Y to X and space. Oh my God, my brain's exploding. Don't worry about all that other stuff. This is just a first swing at what you're going to do just to get started. So what you can do, if your tablet has pressure sensitivity, which this particular tablet does, the technology is Wacom technology. So come over here to Shape Dynamics, and the size has to do with pressure. So the harder I push, the size will go larger or smaller based upon the current size of the brush. It won't go larger than the current size of the brush. So I keep mine on pressure control. So what you want to do is I click this box off, and a lot of times if I want to have tilt, so it also depends on your tablet has tilt. So tilt has to do with how your brush is tilted, like this, like this, like this. Okay, so I like to have mine on tilt. Now you see there's a little triangle right there. On this particular computer, tilt is not activated until I put my brush down. So you see how that goes away? Now it comes back. So tilt is not activated until basically I put the brush to the screen. So just know that. Now a lot of times this will be grayed out and your tablet doesn't support tilt. My other computer, my Dell that I have, which I love, does not support tilt. It's got the active pen stylus, and it does not support tilt, which is okay. It's not a big deal. Okay, so now we're ready to actually start drawing. Now this is the difference, I think, that we need to understand and learn between certain devices, okay? So if I were to go basically into my iPad, I really wouldn't have to worry about all that just starting out. A lot of it is already there. It's already ready to go. And I don't have to sit there and do a bunch of settings. Now, obviously, there are preset things on the iPad. You can just basically, start Procreate, because that's pretty much the drawing program that I utilize. And it's got a lot of preset stuff that'll really get you moving really quickly. It just all depends on what you're doing, what kind of drawing you're trying to facilitate, and exactly what you're doing. I'm just doing a real simple sketch, so I don't really have to worry about a lot of the minutia settings. Okay, now you see how I'm turning. I can turn. Here, I'll watch. I'll show you. See, I turn, and then it depending on what direction I have my pen, will dictate how the stroke looks. So just remember that. Okay, so what are we doing this morning? We're just doing some faces. Just drawing some faces. Like I said, I've got a whole buttload of work today, so I don't really have the time to do a massive drawing or do a whatchamacallit, a stream. I've been doing streams lately just because it seems to be a little bit easier. I don't have to really edit anything. I don't know what you guys think of that. And I do care, obviously, or else I wouldn't ask your opinion. Yeah, I'm going to ask your opinion, but then I'm going to completely ignore you. Okay, so what's really great about this device as well as other tablets is the fact that I can control Z. So if let's say I'm like, la-da-da-da, oh crap. See, in a traditional environment, that would include the eraser. That would include a latency mark, so you would still see the mark there. And if it was ink, then there would be a problem. If I was on doing some drawing or whatever and I accidentally marked up my paper, that would be a problem. But in the digital environment, all I do is Control Z and it's gone. So that's really cool. Now, whenever I'm doing stuff like this, there's a myriad of thoughts going through my head. I'm thinking about form, I'm thinking about shape, I'm thinking about how, who the character is, I'm thinking about expression. Just doing some simple little things here. That pupil's really small. Okay. Drawing stuff in. And I've got my brush programmed. I'm sorry, not my brush, my pen program. Now you're asking me, why don't I use my quickies on the side? I do, and I just recently programmed them in, so it probably behooved me to go ahead and do that. Okay. You can hear the fans going on this particular machine. This machine is pretty powerful. It's the i7, I think the 7th or 8th generation, I really don't know, processor with the dedicated GPU. So recently I swapped some things out in the settings, and lo and behold, after I did that, the fans started coming on pretty much right whenever I started the computer, and I think that has to do with the video card. For those of you who don't understand why it's important that you utilize the video card on these machines and not have an integrated video card, you're sharing it with the CPU, and it's driving multiple things, and it steals from the CPU computing power of the computer. And since there are limited cores, you're like, well, you know, computers, my computer has like 6 cores. Well, the GPU has, could be 50 cores, could be 30 cores, it could be, it's designed different. It's designed to facilitate, visual information and how it interacts with the program. And Photoshop utilizes the GPU to do the drawing and the redraws and how it works. I don't know all the technical jargon for it. I just know that I want to use the GPU, and after I reset everything, it started reacting just completely different, and it was much faster overall. And a lot of times the computer will sense that. It'll auto sense that it has a GPU, which is awesome, but sometimes it doesn't, which really sucks, to be honest with you. I mean, you pay a premium for that GPU in the computer, and if it doesn't sense it, I mean, what's the freaking use of having it? So this guy's just a Joe Schmo, right? Just a normal, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Maybe he's a sailor. Not really. I'm not even give a mustache. I do a lot of moving around. I notice that whenever I edit my videos, I do a lot of moving around, and it's actually pretty irritating for me. So I do apologize. It's just, I need to get, it's like I'm sculpting in a way. I've said that before in my videos. I'm going to turn the taper off because I want to have a nice flat value for this eyeball, and maybe an overshadow for this lid. And I'm going to increase the brush size. I'm going to go ahead and go in and color this in. Not color, but put value in here just a little bit. Okay. He's kind of surprised. He's like, There are other brush settings for those of you who have the Wacom Tech on your machine. There are other brush settings that you can adjust the hardness and how the driver interacts with the program. I'll show you really quick. So what you do is you come over here to the Windows icon, you click the Windows icon, you come down to, on this machine it's the HP control panel, but a lot of times it's the Wacom control panel. So I click on this, it's the same thing basically. It brings up this HP, which would also be Wacom, control panel, and you can set the tip feel to how you want it. Right now I've got it a little bit firmer, and that's in all other. So if I go to Photoshop, and you can customize which program you want certain settings in. So if you look, I've got a ton of, I got TV Paint, I've got Photoshop, Sketchbook, Illustrator, Rebel, ZBrush Core, I've got ZBrush on here, So if I go to I got Clip Studio Paint. So if you come to this one, I've set things up to where it just works. So a lot of people click Windows Ink off, but what I've found out, if you do that, a lot of times the computer will not utilize the Wacom driver. So even though the Windows Ink is on, and they tell you to turn that off, but honestly, I've noticed there's a problem. I don't get pressure sensitivity. I don't get some of the other things. So I leave Windows Ink on. I don't really have a lot of issues. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to put a little bit of an eye shine on here. Okay. Nice. Okay. Go ahead and reverse that back. So you see I come over here to this tool panel, and I can adjust the color by clicking on it once. I can choose a color. I can reverse the color from background to foreground, which is pretty cool. I don't mess with the characters too much in Photoshop unless I'm doing spec work. So, okay, so let's go back. Okay. All right. So now I got to put in the mouth. I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Now you got to remember that there's a lot of muscles all around the face, right? And how, you know, you have to understand certain things about the face to be able to make it emote correctly. You know, whenever you smile, your cheeks go up. Okay, so we're going to have this go up a little bit because I'm having him smile. And I'm going to have this side come up just a little bit. Okay. All right. Kind of like a goofy smile. He's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm going to have a mustache on him really quick. So what I'm going to do, and two, even though he's got a round face, I'm going to square this off just a little bit because I want him to have a little bit more of a masculine feel. And even doing that, you can tell that it's really changed the way he looks. Okay, so now I'm going to give him a mustache. It's not going to... The thing with mustaches is most people will start doing, you know, little lines first. You don't want to do that. You want to think in terms of shape. We know that mustaches, there's a myriad of, I mean, like this, there's, you know, this, there's, gosh, just a myriad of mustaches. What I like to do first is I like to just draw out the basic shape real lightly. Real light. Okay. Comes up, comes down. It's got a little curve at the end. Okay. Comes down. For the longest time, I actually wore a handlebar mustache. That one's down. Oops. Down a little bit too far. So I need to have this be abbreviated a little bit because, again, his face is turned. So you're not going to see as much of this side of the mustache as you would this side. This kind of curves. It curves away from you. So if you look at your hand and you turn it, you notice you're not. If you turn it, you still see a lot of this side, but you don't see a lot of this side. So that's inadvertently what happens. The whole perspective thing changes. Let's have his mouth, his lip kind of go like that. He's got his teeth. Show a little bit of his teeth, not much. Okay. He's got some whiskers coming out here. Okay, so now that I've got the general shape of how I want the mustache to look, now I think too, as artists and budding illustrators and people that do this, a lot of us have that first inclination, mustache equals hair. Hair equals work. Strands. You know, I need to draw every single strand. You don't need to do that. And actually, it's the complete opposite as I completely spit all over my computer. Spit, 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 spit. No, don't spit. Okay, so what I like to do is I shrink my brush up just a little bit, okay? And then I take this and I jack this down the opacity. So now, on maximum pressure, I'm going to get 51% of black. Now, if I overlay it again, it's going to overlay 50% black on top of that back line. So watch. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just start kind of sculpting the brush. I'm sorry, the mustache. Right? I'm just putting a little bit of definition here and there. I need to get rid of this. This doesn't work for me. And I know that this mustache has volume and form, so I'm not just going to draw straight, because that doesn't make any sense. So I'm just basically, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to draw kind of a curve. Okay? And very quickly, I can make the mustache have nice form. And it fans out just a little bit, because remember, it comes from that cheek. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring this back up to 50 or 100%. And if you notice, I'm over here on the left-hand side. I'm using my quick keys to move. Now, if I decide I want to go ahead and do this, I can do this. I can zoom in and out. I've got my quick keys here on my board since I programmed those recently. So I can still do that. So it'd probably make a big difference if I did that, so I don't have my entire arm stretched out 5 feet away from me. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm just going back in and I'm putting variation. Variation of line weight, variation of where stuff is to kind of show variety, because variety is what's going to basically give your illustration some life. You know, you ever heard that terminology, spice of life? This is exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to give a little bit of variation of line weight. You know, as something curves down, it intersects with a different plane. So now I'm going to make this darker. I'm going to increase my brush size. I'm going to make this right here a little bit darker. And I'm going to make right here a little bit darker. Okay. Maybe he's got some whiskers that come like this. Then I've got this entire mass. Comes here. He's got some stubble. Like I said, maybe he's partially a sailor. And two, what helps, and I've said this before, the navigator is really helpful. Let's make him a little bit bigger. Let's get rid of the swatches. I don't need the swatches. I just like this. So the navigator is really good because I can look at, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Panel options, cancel. So I can look and I can see what he looks like really quickly without having to zoom out. And I can look and I can say, yeah, that's working. Yeah, that's not working. I need to change that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. Let's bring him up a little bit. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, let's zoom back in. Boom. Anyway, like I was saying, the you know, the fan comes on, so I guess that's part and parcel of the computer trying to manage, you know, utilizing the video card as the primary source for the computation. And it seemed to have really sped up the computer a lot. I'm very happy with it. For those of you who are in the market for a very great workhorse of a computer, I recommend the HP ZBook. It's great. Okay, let's go ahead and turn off the taper. Just put some value in here. Okay, I'm going to make this quite big, right, about 130 pixels. I'm going to put that in there. Okay, darken that up. Okay. Do some stuff with the beard. Nice. Get a little bit of hair value in there. Change the brush size. Okay. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of having just a floating head, oh my gosh, I'm going to go ahead and transform this. At least I thought I was. I don't know what's going on. Edit. Image. I've noticed this lately. There it goes. Photoshop will do something, such as exactly what it just did, which was not transform what I wanted it to. I'm not really sure where that comes from. It's probably something I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more value because I want the light to shine. This will be the brightest part on the head. So we'll have a little bit darker right here. We'll go ahead and put some value here. Here, we'll make that darker. Nice dark shadow. Make these a little bit darker. That lip. Okay. Underneath the schnoz. Right. Okay, so now I'm going to, just to play around, first I need to go ahead and save file, save, blah, 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 save. So let's go, we'll put the taper back on. The taper. Sorry. Okay, so I've added a layer over here because just in case I want to change where stuff is, I need to go ahead and make his neck. So he's a pretty big guy. So I want his neck to reflect his strength. So I want to make it a large neck. Now if I made him weak, I can make his neck really small. So then obviously now he becomes a different type of character. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make him a stronger character so that neck comes out, and then he's got his little Adam's apple right here. Little Adam's apple. Huge Adam's apple. Okay, the shirt comes here, right, and this shirt comes here. I want this to come out. Good. And always remember, don't get into the details too quickly, because what will happen is you'll find out that inadvertently your perspective might be off, things might not be working out the way that you wanted them to. So if you get too mired down in the details and start spending too much time in the details, then whenever you need to make a correction, it'll be a headache. So right now, all I'm doing is just making and putting in these basic shapes. Okay? Alright, so that's pretty good. So now I like the way that looks. I'll come over here to my layers palette. I'll click Command E. That puts that top layer down on that bottom layer. I'll go ahead and transform this again. Move that down just slightly. Now I'm going to go back to my brush. I'm going to get rid of the taper. And again, I'm thinking in terms of light, value, shadow, and how things are reacting. So I'll make this a little bit darker. Whoops. Good. Good. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, so at this particular stage I would probably move on, but instead I'm going to go ahead and add a layer underneath. I'm going to select my Alt button and I'm going to select the background color, and I'm going to double click and I'm going to bring up this, not to completely white just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in just a hint above that mid-tone background and put in basically my ground, quote-unquote, value. Okay. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to go darker. So I'm going to go darker than the background. So now I'm going to put in my darker value. Just do the eyeballs really quick. This brush is completely free. If you go to creatureartteacher.com, it is the home of Aaron Blaze's channel. You can sign up for his newsletter and you get a great PDF about elephants, and you get this brush, his standard brushes, I believe, for free. Okay. Put this in here. A little bit bigger. Changing it up a little bit, get a little bit of shadow underneath. This is all in shadow right here. Okay, I'm going to switch that to the background color, which is white. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And with pressure and texture, I can go in and kind of adjust, you know, how I want. Now if I want it completely white, like this, but I like having the texture in there. And the lower I go, okay, then we're going to have a little bit of value right here. Whoops, too much. We're going to have a little bit of eye shine. And the way things work, since this is a round, it goes like this. You're going to have the eye shine that kind of radiates out like this. And then it's going to touch a little bit of this eyeball on this side. And then you're going to have reflective light. Okay? So that's how that works. Okay, we're going to come back. We're going to put a little bit of reflective light down here. We're going to have some of this mustache, kind of reflective light over here because it's catching some of the... Okay. And this is just a really simple way of doing something like this. Really quick, really easy. And then, so I'll come back and I'll have my white and I'll have it on pressure. So now, what I'll do is I'll just start maybe putting a couple little doohickeys. Maybe I'll switch over to black. I'll color this eyebrow in. Right? I'll define that a little bit better, that cheek. Okay? I'll go back to white. And two, what you can do instead of going and searching around, what I'll typically do is I'll have a little color palette right here, right? Black, whoops, black, and then I'll do mid-tone gray, a little bit darker. Okay, so those can be my little palette. So now I switch back and forth. Whoops, let's go back to black. Going back to black, baby. Right? Okay, so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to put some dark streaks. I want to make this a little bit thinner. Again, variation. I'm not worrying too much about consistencies just yet. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit darker right here because I think there's probably a little bit of a shadow right there. So let's go ahead and make that bigger. There's that shadow for that stash. The stash shadow. Okay, so I'm going to go back to white. White. Maybe he's got some white whiskers in here. Some simple highlights. Lips being a little, they're a little glistening. They're a little moist. They're a little moist. Little highlight right here. I'm not really liking that at all. That's okay. You know, at this point in the illustration, I'm not really interested. Just wanted to get things done. He's got some white brows because maybe he's a little bit older. No, I don't like that at all. Okay. I could sit here and do this for quite a long time, right? I can sit there and do so much. And I say that a lot just because, again, I want to iterate to you guys. You don't have to sit down and illustrate the entire planet character-wise. You can have a little fun, do a little warm-up, right? We'll do a little bit of a highlight on the bottom. Maybe he's got a little highlight at the bottom here, and then this rim light right here. Okay, Mustache here, rim light, shining, and then it comes all the way up here. Okay, and then finally, there's a couple things I can do. I can really push my shadows, my values. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on multiply. I added a layer. This is my darkest dark. I'm going to go ahead and push that size up a little bit, and I'm just going to start messing around with the shadows. Now I'll show you. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push this back to about 45%, and this is going to go back to right about 55%. So now I can start messing around with pushing and pulling some of those aerial or some of those planes, right? So I can just start pushing and pulling, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here in a second to help. So he's got that round. La 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 la. Sorry about the video yesterday not getting the sound in there. What an idiot. What an idiot I was. Sorry about that. Golly. One of my buddies, helped fix it for me. Okay, so now I've got that in there. I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. I'm going to go to overlay. I'm going to go to white. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull the whites, or I'm sorry, the lighter values out and leave the darks where I want them. See how that works? Alright, so let's go ahead and make that a little bit darker, go down to the bottom layer, add a layer. I'll add some texture in the background. Oops. Texture. Add some texture. Okay, go ahead and select tool. A lot of people don't know this. If you click the Alt button and you have this marked on layer up here instead of a group, you can click on an object inside of your, actually it's control, click control. Click an object inside of your layer palette, and it'll go right to the layer that you want instead of having to hunt for it. So, alright guys, that's what I wanted to show you today. Working on the ZBook, doing some character faces or face. Go out and draw something today. Do something fun. Sew back into yourself. Take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes, take 20 minutes, whatever it takes. And just really enjoy the process of creating. If you don't have a device, there is always a pencil, and you can use paper. Definitely don't use what you don't have as an excuse not to do something. Because honestly, we have a lot more than what we think. Especially with regards to, the ability to create artwork. I spoke to a student once. It was so disheartened because they wanted to do a digital illustration and didn't have the capability to do that. And I said, well, in the meantime, what should you be doing? And they didn't understand. And I said, well, in the meantime, you should be learning how to use a pen and pencil and those techniques that maybe will help you once you get a tablet, because it's only a matter of time. So anyway, thank you guys for visiting. Like and subscribe if you like what you see, and as always, I appreciate you guys being with me on this journey. Talk to you soon.